This little girl was seen by a millionaire in the middle of the street. In a humiliating situation, her violent and aggressive father was pulling the girl's hair. But a millionaire saw everything, and the reaction he had after that will shock you. Comment what you think is going to happen and subscribe to my channel to support my work. The leaden sky poured a fine drizzle over the blocks, a low-income neighborhood in Syracuse, New York, where unfinished houses huddled together on dirt roads. Ascanio Verona's imported sedan was completely out of place in that poverty-stricken scene. His Italian loafers sank into the mud as he tried to find the address jotted down on a crumpled piece of paper, a personal delivery he had decided to make against the advice of his staff. At 47, owner of one of the largest school supply companies in the country, Ascanio didn't usually frequent this area, but something compelled him to personally deliver this special package. A complete set of school supplies for a family who had written a moving letter to the company. That's when he heard the screams, high-pitched, desperate screams that chilled his spine. Without thinking twice, he abandoned the paper with the address and ran towards the sounds. Turning the corner, he came across a scene he would never forget. A burly man, reeking of alcohol, was holding a small, fragile girl by the hair. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The child's faded blue dress was dirty and torn. On one foot, a worn pink shoe. The other, bare, suspended in the air as she struggled. Around them, neighbors watched paralyzed, some whispering, others looking away, but no one dared to interfere. "You little pest! How many times have I told you not to beg for food from others?" The man roared, shaking the girl violently. Tears streamed down the child's dirty face as she tried in vain to break free. Something snapped inside Ascanio. In seconds, he was next to the aggressor. "Let her go, now!" His voice was deep, controlled, but filled with a fury he didn't even know he possessed. The man turned with a crooked smile. "Who are you to tell me how to raise my daughter?" The strong smell of cheap liquor made Ascanio take a step back. But seeing the trickle of blood running from the girl's scalp, where the thick fingers squeezed tightly, something inside him exploded. The punch hit the aggressor's jaw before Ascanio could think of the consequences. The man staggered back, releasing the girl, who fell sitting in the mud. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The silence was absolute, broken only by the heavy breathing of the two men. Ascanio acted on instinct. He picked up the girl, feeling her little body tremble violently. She didn't resist, clinging to him as if her life depended on it. Her little brown eyes, blurred by tears, stared at him with a mixture of fear and hope that broke his heart. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked gently, as he moved away from the fallen aggressor. Isabel," she whispered, between sobs. "You'll regret this," the man roared, getting up with difficulty. "I'm her father. I have my rights." Ascanio already had his cell phone in his hand, dialing Child Protective Services. His free hand caressed Isabel's hair, feeling the knots and injuries under his fingers. Each discovery of a new injury fueled his anger, but he remained externally calm, murmuring words of comfort to the girl. The neighbors began to approach, now that the immediate danger had passed. An elderly lady with a colorful shawl on her shoulders stepped forward. "Mister, this ain't nothing new," she said, wringing her hands in her apron. "That Dale, he ain't really her daddy. The girl's mama passed a long time ago, and he only kept her for the government checks." Ascanio felt Isabel shrink even further in his arms upon hearing the man's name. He watched Dale, who was now spitting blood on the ground, cursing and threatening everyone. Even fallen, his presence was an evil shadow hovering over the girl. The arrival of the caseworker brought some order to the chaos. But when she tried to take Isabel from Ascanio's arms, the girl clung even tighter to him, refusing to let go. Her little fingers squeezed the businessman's expensive shirt, leaving marks of blood and mud on the fine fabric. "I need to take her to a shelter," the caseworker explained in a soft but firm voice. "It's procedure. Ascanio felt as if he were giving away a piece of himself when he finally managed to convince Isabel to go with the caseworker. The girl's large, frightened eyes didn't leave him until the Child Protective Services car turned the corner. It was only then that he noticed the police cars arriving. Dale, now recovered, was pointing at him, surrounded by 2 officers. The words assault and complaint floated in the heavy afternoon air. Ascanio's life was about to change drastically, but he didn't know it yet. At that moment, all he could think about was Isabel's gaze, the tremor of her small body, and the devastating feeling that, despite having taken her from Dale's hands, he might not have done enough. At the police station, Ascanio stared at his hands, stained with Isabel's dried blood. Sitting in an uncomfortable chair, he waited to give his statement while listening to Dale's altered voice in the next room, demanding justice and threatening to sue him for all possible damages. The businessman barely paid attention to the threats. His mind was fixed on the image of the girl trembling in his arms. "Mr. Verona," called a policewoman, indicating the interrogation room, "please come with me." For the next 2 hours, Ascanio recounted in detail what had happened. His lawyer, Evelyn Torres, arrived in the middle of the deposition, bringing with her a briefcase full of documents. She tried to argue about legitimate defense of others, but the detective was adamant there were witnesses that Ascanio struck first, without Dale making any movement in his direction. "Do you realize the seriousness of what you've done?" asked the detective, adjusting his heavy-rimmed glasses. "Regardless of the circumstances, physically assaulting another person is a crime." Ascanio ran a hand over his tired face. "And what he was doing to that child, isn't that a crime too?" "We are investigating the allegations against Mr. Dale," the detective replied without emotion, "but one thing doesn't justify the other." Leaving the police station, it was already night. Evelyn accompanied him to the car, explaining the possible legal consequences. "He's going to sue you, Ascanio, and he has a good chance of winning." "How much?" "What? How much does he want?" Evelyn sighed. 200 grand for moral and physical damages." Ascanio gave a dry laugh. "Pay it. Pay double if necessary. Just tell me where the girl is." "Ascanio, you can't get involved anymore," Evelyn warned. "This will only worsen your legal situation." But he was no longer listening. He drove through the city until he found the shelter where Isabel was. It was an old building with bars on the windows and a small, faded playground. In the front yard, the security guard prevented him from entering. It wasn't visiting hours. Through the bars, Ascanio watched the illuminated windows. In which one would Isabel be? Would she be able to sleep? Would she have eaten something? The questions tormented him. He returned to his luxurious penthouse, but couldn't rest. The images of the day repeated in his mind like a macabre film. Around 3 in the morning, he picked up the phone and made a call he had been postponing for years. "Olivia, I'm sorry to call you at this hour." On the other end of the line, his ex-wife took a few seconds to respond. "Ascanio, has something happened?" Her voice, even sleepy, still carried that sweetness he knew so well. Olivia had been the only woman he had truly loved. The marriage ended not for lack of love, but for the grief that consumed them after she lost the baby they so desired. The pain pushed them apart, even when it should have united them. "I need your help," he said, his voice choked. "As a child, psychologist, and as a human being." He told her everything, about Isabel, about the assault, about how he couldn't get the image of that defenseless child out of his head. Olivia listened in silence, only her breathing indicating that she was still on the line. "Where is she now?" she finally asked. "At the municipal shelter. Olivia, she can't go back to that man. You had to see the injuries, the fear in her eyes. And what do you intend to do?" The question hung in the air. What did he intend after all? He was a lonely workaholic man with no experience with children, but something inside him had changed that afternoon. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I can't simply ignore it." Olivia was silent for a long moment. "Give me the shelter's address. I'll go there first thing in the morning. Would you do that?" "Ascanio, you may have changed a lot in these years, but your voice when you are truly affected by something remains the same. If you're like this for this girl, there must be a reason." After hanging up, Ascanio remained awake, watching the city lights through the window. His cell phone wouldn't stop vibrating. The story had already leaked to the press. "Millionaire. Businessman assaults low-income resident," read the headlines. Some reports portrayed him as an arrogant rich man who thought he was above the law. Others, rarer, mentioned the context of the child's abuse. In the morning, his secretary called to inform him that 3 important meetings had been cancelled. Clients didn't want to associate their brands with an aggressor. Ascanio barely registered the information. He was more concerned with another call he had just received, Child Protective Services, informing him that Dale, as the legal guardian, was demanding Isabel's immediate return. "But you can't do that," Ascanio exploded. "That man is a monster. Mr. Verona, I understand your concern, but without concrete evidence of abuse and with a legal guardianship established, our hands are tied," explained the caseworker, her voice conveying frustration. "Unless new allegations or evidence arise..." Ascanio hung up the phone and grabbed his keys. He couldn't allow Isabel to return to that hell. But upon arriving at the shelter, he found Olivia already inside, talking to the social worker. His ex-wife, always elegant in her beige suit, had tears in her eyes. "Am I too late?" he asked, breathless. Olivia turned around, and there was something different in her gaze. "No, you arrived exactly at the right time. I need to show you something." She led him to a small room where Isabel was sitting, holding a headless doll. The girl looked up when she saw him, and a small smile appeared on her injured lips, the first Ascanio had seen her give. "Look what she drew," Olivia whispered, showing a sheet of paper. In the childish drawing, there were 3 figures: a little girl in a blue dress, a man in a brown suit, and a curly-haired woman with a giant heart on her chest. Underneath, in crooked letters, was written, "My new family." Ascanio felt his heart squeeze. He looked at Olivia, who was also watching the drawing with teary eyes. At that moment, something changed between them, as if fate, through the small injured hands of Isabel, was trying to reconnect the broken threads of their lives. But before they could process that emotion, a voice thundered through the room. "Where is my daughter?" Dale was standing in the doorway with a court officer beside him, holding a document. Isabel, upon seeing the man, dropped the doll and cowered under the table, trembling uncontrollably. The court officer advanced into the room, extending the document in his hand. "Court order for immediate return of the minor to the custody of the father," he announced in a monotonous voice, as if this were just another procedure in his day. Olivia reacted first, instinctively positioning herself between Dale and the table where Isabel was hiding. Her years of experience as a child psychologist screamed that something was deeply wrong in that situation. "Please, let's talk outside," she asked, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "The child is in a state of extreme emotional fragility." Dale took a step forward, ignoring Olivia completely. "Isabel, come here now." The smell of alcohol on his breath betrayed that he had already started drinking, even though it was still morning. Isabel's trembling under the table intensified. A small sound, like the whimper of a wounded animal, escaped her lips. Ascanio felt every muscle in his body tense, fighting against the urge to assault Dale again. "Mr. Dale," intervened the shelter's social worker, "we need to follow the proper procedures. The child shows clear signs of trauma." "What trauma?" Dale roared. She's just spoiled rotten since this stuck-up playboy meddled where he wasn't called. The court officer cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Gentlemen, I have a court order to execute. If there is resistance, I will have to request police support. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Isabel came out from under the table, still trembling, but with a crumpled paper in her small hands. It was the drawing she had made. With hesitant steps, she approached the social worker and extended the paper. "Ma'am," she whispered, so low that she could hardly be heard, "show him what Uncle Dale does to me when he's angry." The social worker took the paper and turned it over. On the back of the new family drawing, there was another drawing, a dark, disproportionate figure with red eyes and giant hands surrounded by brown spots that looked like blood. On the edges of the paper, Isabel had drawn several bruises, represented by purple and green circles, exactly like the ones that marked her little arms at that moment. Olivia, who was watching over the social worker's shoulder, brought her hand to her mouth. In her years of profession, she had seen dozens of drawings by traumatized children. This was one of the most disturbing. "This doesn't mean anything," Dale protested, moving to grab the drawing. "She's just a lying brat trying to get attention." But the social worker was already on the phone, and her words changed everything. "Dr. Evelyn, I need you to come immediately. We have graphic evidence of ongoing abuse consistent with the preliminary medical reports. Yes, the child produced it spontaneously." Dale's face transformed. The mask of worried father fell, revealing an expression of pure evil. "You little pest!" he roared, advancing towards Isabel. What happened next was so fast that later no one could say exactly the sequence. Olivia grabbed Isabel, protecting her with her own body. Ascanio grabbed Dale before he could reach them. The court officer tried to intervene, but slipped on the fallen drawing, hitting his head on the corner of the table. "Help!" shouted the social worker, running into the hallway. "Security!" When the shelter guards arrived, they found a chaotic scene. Dale, foaming with rage, restrained by Ascanio. The court officer sitting on the floor, dazed. Olivia embracing Isabel in a corner, whispering words of comfort. And the social worker on the phone, now not only with the lawyer, but also with the police. The next few hours were a blur of depositions. Photographs of Isabel's bruises, medical reports being attached to the case file. Evelyn Torres, Ascanio's lawyer, arrived like a hurricane, taking command of the situation. "The court order is suspended," she announced around noon. "I got an emergency injunction. Isabel will stay in the shelter until a new hearing." Dale was taken away by the police, yelling threats. He promised revenge, swore everyone would regret it. But for the first time, his words sounded hollow. The monster had shown his claws in front of the wrong people. When the dust settled, Ascanio found Olivia sitting on the shelter's small playground, watching Isabel, who, exhausted after all the turmoil, had finally fallen asleep in her lap. "We need to talk," he said, sitting next to his ex-wife. Olivia gently stroked Isabel's hair. "Yes, we do, but not here, not now. You felt it too, didn't you? When she showed that drawing, like something bigger than us was happening?" Olivia finished, a sad half-smile on her lips. "Yes, I felt it." Ascanio watched them. There was a naturalness in the way Isabel snuggled into Olivia's arms, as if that had always been her place. The girl was still holding the headless doll, tightly, even in her sleep. "Why won't she let go of that doll?" he asked, more to himself than to Olivia. "It's her transitional object," Olivia explained softly. "Something that represents safety amidst the chaos. Probably the only thing she managed to bring from home, from before." "Before what?" Olivia hesitated. "Before Dale. Ascanio, while you were busy with the police, I spoke to some people here at the shelter. This girl's story, it's worse than we imagined." At that moment, Isabel stirred in Olivia's lap, her little face twisting in a nightmare. Small sounds of anguish escaped her lips. "Shh, it's okay," Olivia whispered, rocking her gently. "You're safe now." Ascanio felt a lump in his throat. "What did you find out?" Her mother, Olivia swallowed hard, died in a fire 2 years ago. Dale isn't her biological father. He was just a neighbor who offered to take care of her. When her mother passed away, he got temporary custody by claiming he was the only family she had left. "But why? Why would he do that?" "For the money," Olivia replied, her voice full of bitterness. "Pension, government assistance, donations from well-meaning people who believed they were helping a struggling single dad." Ascanio stood up abruptly, anger bubbling in his chest, but Olivia stopped him with a look. "Not now," she said firmly. "She's finally sleeping peacefully, maybe for the first time in a long time. Let's not disturb her." He nodded, forcing himself to calm down. He sat down again, closer to the two of them this time. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "I don't know," Olivia admitted, "but I know I can't abandon her, not after today." A noise at the entrance to the playground made them look up. Evelyn Torres was standing there, a serious expression on her face. "We need to talk," said the lawyer. "Dale has made new accusations, and this time he has evidence that could complicate your situation a lot." Evelyn led Ascanio and Olivia to a small meeting room at the shelter, while one of the caregivers stayed with Isabel, who was still asleep. The air conditioning hummed quietly, creating an irritating counterpoint to the tense silence that settled in when the lawyer closed the door. "Dale has a video," Evelyn began without preamble, "of the moment of the assault. It shows you, Ascanio, hitting him without apparent provocation." "Without provocation." Ascanio raised his voice, indignant. "He was hurting a child." "In the video," Evelyn continued, ignoring the interruption, "it doesn't show the previous moment. It only shows you getting out of the car and attacking him. And there's more. He managed to gather statements from neighbors." Olivia, who had been watching in silence until then, leaned forward. "What kind of statements?" Evelyn sighed heavily before answering. "People claiming that you two," she pointed to Ascanio and Olivia, "have been harassing the neighborhood, offering money in exchange for false testimony against him." "That's absurd," Ascanio protested. "I never—" "There are also screenshots of alleged bank transfers," Evelyn cut in. "They're fake, of course, but very well done. He's building a narrative, Ascanio, the one of the rich businessman who, together with his ex-wife, is trying to steal the daughter of a humble, hard-working father." Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "Hard-working? He doesn't even have a job. He lives off the benefits he receives because of Isabel." "And how do you know that?" Evelyn questioned incisively. "Have you been investigating him on your own?" Olivia's silence was answer enough. "My God!" Evelyn moaned, running her hands over her face. "You're not helping me. Any private investigation can be interpreted as harassment." A sound of childish crying interrupted the conversation. Through the corridors of the shelter echoed the anguished sound of Isabel having another nightmare. Olivia stood up immediately, but Evelyn stopped her. "Wait, we need to define a strategy now. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" Ascanio was surprised. "So fast?" "Dale has good connections at the courthouse," Evelyn explained, "and you have no idea the damage this story is causing in the media. Elite couple tries to buy the daughter of a working-class father. That's the headline that's circulating." Isabel's screams increased, making Olivia squirm in her chair. "She needs me," she whispered. "She needs you to act intelligently," Evelyn retorted. "If you keep acting on impulse, you'll lose her forever." At that moment, the door opened, and one of the caregivers entered in a hurry. "Dr. Olivia, the girl is having a severe breakdown. We can't calm her down." Olivia cast a pleading look at Evelyn, who nodded resignedly. As soon as she left, the lawyer turned to Ascanio. "There's one more thing," she said, lowering her voice. "Dale got access to Olivia's medical records." Ascanio felt his blood run cold. "How?" "I don't know, but he knows about the loss of the baby, and he intends to use that against her at the hearing." The anger that Ascanio felt was different from the explosion that led him to assault Dale. It was something cold, calculated, that made his fingers tingle with hatred. "He can't do that," he growled. "He can't use our pain like that." "He can and he will," Evelyn replied. "He'll argue that Olivia is emotionally unstable, that she's projecting the child she lost onto Isabel. And you, Ascanio, will be painted as the manipulative ex-husband who is exploiting this fragility." In the hallway, Isabel's sobs subsided, replaced by Olivia's soft voice singing a lullaby. Ascanio closed his eyes, remembering when he heard that same song years ago, when Olivia sang to her 5-month pregnant belly, full of dreams and plans. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Legally, not much," Evelyn admitted. "But I have an idea. It's risky, and you need to trust me completely." Before she could explain, they were interrupted by shouts coming from the shelter's reception area. Running to see what was happening, they found a shocking scene. Regina, the lady with the colorful shawl who had defended Isabel the day before, was lying on the floor, clutching her chest. "He pushed me," she gasped. "Dale was following me, wanted me to change my testimony." Shelter employees were rushing to call an ambulance, while Regina struggled to breathe. Her eyes met Ascanio's. "Her mother," the lady whispered. "Isabel's mother. The fire wasn't an accident." Before she could finish the sentence, Regina lost consciousness. Chaos broke out in the shelter. Paramedics arriving, police being called, children crying, frightened. Amid the confusion, Olivia emerged, carrying Isabel. The girl, upon seeing Regina unconscious, began to tremble violently. "Aunt Regina," she murmured, clinging to Olivia's neck. "She knows." "She saw..." "Saw what, my love?" Olivia asked gently. But Isabel closed up again in her silence, her eyes fixed on the lady being carried away by the paramedics. On her little arms, the bruises seemed more evident under the bright light of the reception area. Evelyn watched everything with the sharp eyes of a lawyer. "The hearing is tomorrow at 9 a.m., she said, "and now we have a key witness in the hospital. This is no coincidence." "What do we do?" Ascanio asked, feeling more lost by the minute. "You two, come with me," Evelyn ordered. "Now, and bring Isabel. There's something we need to do before it's too late." As they followed the lawyer to her car, Ascanio noticed that Isabel was still holding the headless doll. But now, in addition to the doll, she was clutching in her small hand something that looked like a piece of charred paper. "What's that in her hand?" he asked Olivia. "I don't know," she replied, worried. "She doesn't want to show it to anyone. She just keeps repeating that it's Mommy's proof." The sun was beginning to set as they got into Evelyn's car. On the horizon, dark clouds heralded an approaching storm. No one could predict that that night would be only the beginning of a series of revelations that would forever change the fate of everyone involved. Evelyn's car snaked through the dark city streets as the storm approached. In the back seat, Olivia held Isabel, who had finally fallen asleep, still clutching her mysterious piece of paper. Ascanio watched them through the rearview mirror, his heart tightening each time a lightning bolt illuminated the girl's scarred face. "Where are we going?" he asked for the third time, but Evelyn remained silent, focused on driving. After nearly an hour's drive, they stopped in front of a modest house on the outskirts of the city. An elderly lady was waiting on the porch, holding a black umbrella. "Mrs. Mallory," Evelyn introduced. She was Isabel's mother's closest neighbor. The lady approached as they got out of the car, her eyes fixed on the sleeping girl. "My God," she murmured, "she looks just like Clara." "Clara?" Olivia asked softly. "Her mother," replied Mrs. Mallory, gesturing for them to enter. We need to talk before that monster finds out you're here." Inside the simple but impeccably tidy house, Mrs. Mallory served coffee while telling a story that made everyone's blood run cold. "Clara was like a daughter to me," she began, her wrinkled hands trembling as she held the cup. "When she got pregnant, so young and alone, I was the one who helped her. Isabel's father died in a motorcycle accident before he even knew he would be a father. Clara raised the girl alone, working as a seamstress right here in this neighborhood." A particularly loud thunderclap made Isabel stir in Olivia's lap, but it didn't wake her up. Mrs. Mallory lowered her voice even further before continuing. "Dale started appearing in their lives when Isabel was 4 years old. At first, he seemed like a decent man, helped with small repairs around the house, brought gifts for the girl. Clara was so lonely. She ended up being fooled." "But what changed?" Ascanio asked, unable to contain his impatience. "His temper," replied Mrs. Mallory, her eyes darkening with the memory. "It started slowly. First it was yelling. Then he started drinking. Clara tried to end the relationship several times, but he always came back begging for forgiveness. Until she found out." The lady stopped, swallowing hard. Evelyn leaned forward. "Found out what, Mrs. Mallory?" "That he had a scheme. It wasn't the first time he had done this. He would approach single mothers, gain their trust, and then—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "The fire," Olivia murmured, hugging Isabel tighter. Mrs. Mallory nodded, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Clara found out everything. She had gathered evidence, documents from other women he had tricked. She planned to report him to the police station the next day. But that night, the fire started in Clara's room," she continued after a moment. "Isabel only survived because she was sleeping on my couch. We had spent the afternoon baking cookies together." Ascanio felt his stomach churn. "And no one suspected anything?" "Of course we suspected," exclaimed Mrs. Mallory, her voice rising dangerously. "But Dale had already planned everything. Appeared as the consoling hero, the family friend willing to take care of the orphan. He had all the documents ready, as if he were already waiting for it, and the evidence that Clara had gathered disappeared in the fire." "Not all of it," said a weak little voice. Isabel had woken up and was now sitting in Olivia's lap, her big eyes fixed on Mrs. Mallory. With trembling hands, the girl extended the crumpled paper she was holding. It was a partially burned envelope, but still sealed. "Mommy gave it to me on the day of the fire," said Isabel, her voice almost a whisper. "She told me not to show it to anyone, only when I found really good people." Mrs. Mallory brought her hands to her mouth, recognizing the envelope. "The document. Clara told me about it. It's the confession of one of the other women, recorded on video. She kept a copy on a flash drive inside that envelope." Evelyn took the envelope carefully. "This can change everything at the hearing tomorrow, but we need to act very carefully. If Dale finds out—" As if responding to her words, a car braked sharply in front of the house. Through the curtains, they saw Dale getting out of the vehicle, accompanied by 2 men of menacing appearance. "The back door," Mrs. Mallory whispered urgently. "Quick!" But before they could move, they heard glass shattering. The smell of gasoline filled the room. "He's going to do it again," Isabel murmured, trembling violently. "Like he did to Mommy." Olivia hugged the girl, her brain working frantically. "The basement," she said, noticing the trap door half hidden under the rug. "Mrs. Mallory, is there an exit?" "There's a passage that leads to the neighbor's yard," the lady replied, already moving the rug. "We used it during the floods." The sound of breaking glass came closer. Smoke began to enter through the cracks in the windows. "Go!" ordered Mrs. Mallory. "I'll distract them." "No!" Ascanio protested. "You're coming with us!" But the lady was already pushing Evelyn, who was holding the precious envelope, towards the trap door. Olivia descended next, with Isabel clinging to her neck. "Take care of her," Mrs. Mallory whispered to Ascanio, before pushing him into the darkness of the basement as well. She deserves a real family. The trapdoor closed above them, just as the front door was kicked in. In the dark, they could hear Mrs. Mallory's firm voice. "Good evening, Dale. I was expecting your visit." The sound of furniture being overturned echoed above them. Isabel buried her face in Olivia's neck, stifling a sob. "This way," whispered Evelyn, guiding them with the dim light of her cell phone. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing them to stoop as they advanced. Dirty water reached their ankles, and the air was heavy with the smell of mold. Behind them, they heard Dale's screams and the growing crackle of flames. When they finally emerged into the neighboring yard, they saw the red sky reflecting the fire that was beginning to consume Mrs. Mallory's house. "Oh my God," Olivia murmured, covering Isabel's ears. "We don't have time," Evelyn cut in. "The hearing is in 6 hours, and now we have a new crime to prove." Ascanio looked one last time at the burning house, feeling helpless and furious. Another life destroyed by that monster. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice hoarse from smoke and emotion. "To the only place he won't think to look for us," Evelyn replied. "The house where it all began. Clara's old house." Isabel, still, trembling in Olivia's arms, raised her head. In her eyes, besides fear, there was something new, a small flicker of hope. "There's more there," she said softly. "Mommy showed me where she kept the important things, in a place that only we knew." Sirens began to sound in the distance, approaching rapidly. The group moved in the shadows, moving away from the burning house, each carrying a different weight. Evelyn with the envelope that could change everything, Olivia with Isabel in her arms, and Ascanio with the growing certainty that this night would define not only the girl's fate, but that of all of them. Clara's old house was at the end of a dead-end street, partially hidden by a thicket that had grown out of control in the last 2 years. The walls still showed the dark marks of the fire that took Isabel's mother's life, like scars that refused to disappear. Olivia felt Isabel tremble in her arms as they approached. The rain, which had finally begun to fall, couldn't mask the persistent smell of burning that seemed imprinted on the walls. "Are you sure we should go in?" Olivia whispered to Evelyn, worried about the emotional impact that this would have on the girl. But it was Isabel who answered, her voice small but determined. "It needs to be here. Mommy's things, she only showed me." Ascanio examined the structure of the house with concern. "Is it safe? The fire may have compromised." "It only got in her room," Isabel interrupted. "The special place is on the other side." Evelyn checked her cell phone. "It's 3 in the morning. The hearing is at 9. We need to be quick." Using the light of their cell phones, the group went around the house until they found a partially broken side door. The interior was exactly as it had been left after the fire investigation. Charred furniture, destroyed photographs on the walls, abandoned toys covered in soot. Isabel climbed out of Olivia's lap for the first time since they left the shelter. Her bare feet, she'd lost her shoes in the escape, left small marks in the dust on the floor. "There," she pointed to a built-in cabinet on the kitchen wall. Ascanio approached the cabinet, but Isabel stopped him. "Not like that. There's a way." With a naturalness that broke the adults' hearts, the girl knelt and crawled inside the cabinet. Her small fingers groped the bottom of the furniture until they found something. A soft click echoed in the silence. "Mommy said it was our secret," she explained, as a hidden compartment opened at the bottom of the cabinet. From the hiding place, Isabel removed an apparently ordinary shoebox, but when she opened it, everyone held their breath. Inside were dozens of letters, newspaper clippings, and most importantly, a notebook with a delicate and hurried handwriting. "Her diary," murmured Evelyn, taking the notebook carefully. "This could be..." A noise at the front of the house made everyone freeze. Headlights briefly illuminated the broken windows. "He followed us," whispered Olivia, pulling Isabel back into her arms. "Impossible," Evelyn replied. "No one knew we were coming here." "Someone must have seen us leaving Mrs. Mallory's house," said Ascanio, his voice tense. The sound of approaching footsteps made Isabel shrink. Silent tears began to stream down her face. "This way," she whispered, pointing to an almost invisible door on the kitchen wall. "It's where I hid when he got angry." The door revealed a tiny space, probably an old pantry. There was barely room for everyone, but at that moment they had no choice. Through a crack, they saw Dale enter the kitchen, accompanied by one of the men who was with him at Mrs. Mallory's house. The other was probably watching the outside. "I know you're in here," Dale growled, his voice altered by alcohol. "That nosy old lady didn't survive to tell, but I know you came here." Olivia covered Isabel's mouth with her hand, feeling the girl tremble violently. Ascanio positioned himself in front of them, ready to act if they were discovered. "Search properly," Dale ordered his accomplice. "That tramp Clara was always too smart. She must have left something hidden." The man began to ransack the kitchen, knocking over what was still standing. When he approached the cabinet where the secret compartment was, Isabel clutched the box she was still holding tighter. It was then that something unexpected happened. Evelyn's cell phone, forgotten on silent mode, began to vibrate. It was a text message, but the small noise was enough. Dale turned towards the pantry, his eyes shining with cruel satisfaction. "I found you." What happened next was so fast that later no one could remember the exact sequence. Dale advanced towards the pantry door at the same moment that his accomplice shouted from the room, "Boss, there's a squad car coming." Indeed, blue and red lights were beginning to illuminate the street. Dale hesitated, torn between his prey and the need to flee. It was all they needed. Ascanio pushed the door with all his might, knocking Dale down. Evelyn grabbed the box with the evidence, while Olivia ran with Isabel towards the back of the house. But Dale wouldn't give up easily. Even fallen, he managed to grab Ascanio's ankle, causing him to fall. The box that Evelyn was holding opened, scattering papers everywhere. "No one is going to take her away from me," Dale bellowed, his voice distilling hatred. "She's my guaranteed retirement." Those words, spoken with such cruelty, provoked an unexpected reaction in Isabel. The girl, always so frightened, broke free from Olivia's arms and ran to where Dale and Ascanio were fighting. "I'm not yours!" she shouted, her small voice charged with a surprising strength. "My mommy knew you were bad. She left everything written down." Dale froze for a moment, processing the girl's words. It was enough for Ascanio to get rid of him and for Evelyn to collect the most important documents. The sound of sirens was very close now. Dale's accomplice had already fled, leaving him alone. "This isn't over," he threatened, retreating towards the door. "You have no idea what I can do." "No," replied Isabel, now safe again in Olivia's arms. "You don't know what my mommy was capable of." When the police finally entered the house, they found only the exhausted group and a trail of destruction. Dale had disappeared into the rainy night, but he had left behind something he didn't expect, a witness who had finally lost the fear to speak. Isabel, still trembling but with a new sparkle in her eyes, hugged the box with her mother's memories. Inside it, besides the evidence that could incriminate Dale, there was something even more precious: the love story between a mother and her daughter, and the meticulous plan of a woman who, even after death, found a way to protect her little one. But the night wasn't over yet, and with only 5 hours until the hearing, the group knew that the hardest battle was yet to come. The rain continued to fall as the group arrived at Evelyn's office. The sky was still dark, but the first signs of dawn were beginning to appear on the horizon. Isabel had finally fallen asleep in the back seat of the car, still clutching the box with her mother's memories. "We have 3 hours until the hearing," said Evelyn, serving strong coffee to everyone while spreading the documents found on her work table. Olivia, sitting on a small couch with Isabel in her lap, watched. The girl's sleep. The tear marks were still visible on her little face, but there was something different in her expression, a serenity that wasn't there before. "How is she?" asked Ascanio, approaching with a cup of coffee for Olivia. "Exhausted," she replied, accepting the drink with her free hand. "But you know what's strange? Since we found that box, she hasn't held the headless doll once." It was true. The doll, Isabel's inseparable companion since they met her, lay forgotten in a corner of the room. "Maybe she doesn't need it anymore," Ascanio suggested softly. "Now she has something from her mother to hold." The moment was interrupted by an exclamation from Evelyn, who was reading Clara's diary. "My God," murmured the lawyer, "this is much worse than we imagined. Clara wasn't the first." Ascanio and Olivia approached the table, taking care not to wake Isabel. "What do you mean?" asked Ascanio. "Dale had a pattern," Evelyn explained, flipping through the pages of the diary. "Clara discovered everything in the last months of her life. He looked for single mothers in vulnerable situations, approached them offering help, gained the trust of them and their children. When he realized he couldn't get anything more from them, the fires," Olivia completed, horrified. "Exactly. Clara found 3 similar cases in other cities. Same story. Single mother dies in mysterious fire. Dale takes custody of the child, receives benefits and donations as a dedicated father, and a few months later disappears with the child. No one ever hears from them again." "And what happened to those children?" asked Ascanio, fearing the answer. Evelyn shook her head. "Clara couldn't find out, but she found a disturbing pattern. All the children were between 6 and 7 years old when they disappeared." "The age Isabel is now," Olivia whispered, hugging the girl tighter. "There's more," continued Evelyn, picking up some newspaper clippings. "Clara started investigating his past. Dale isn't his real name. She found at least 3 other identities he used. A particularly strong thunderclap made Isabel stir, but she didn't wake up." Olivia stroked her hair gently. "Why? Didn't she report it before?" asked Ascanio. "She tried," replied Evelyn, showing some pages from the diary, "but no one believed her. Without concrete evidence, it was her word against that of a respectable citizen who helped the community. So she started gathering evidence methodically. She even managed to get a recorded confession from a former neighbor who had witnessed one of the previous fires. The flash drive in the envelope, Olivia remembered. Yes, but Clara knew she was running out of time. In the last pages of the diary, she writes that Dale was getting more aggressive, more controlling. She feared she wouldn't be able to protect Isabel in time. At that moment, Evelyn's phone rang. It was from the police station. Regina, the lady that Dale had assaulted at the shelter, had woken up in the hospital and wanted to speak urgently with them. "I'll go there," said Evelyn, grabbing her purse. "You stay here and continue organizing these documents, and don't open the door to anyone." As soon as Evelyn left, a heavy silence fell over the room. Ascanio approached the window, watching the unrelenting rain. His reflection in the glass showed a man different from the polished businessman he had been just a few days ago. He was disheveled, with an unshaven beard and soot stains on his face. "What are you thinking about?" asked Olivia, noticing his distant expression. "About how life can change in a matter of days," he replied, turning to face her. "If I hadn't decided to make that personal delivery—" "It wasn't a coincidence," said a sleepy little voice. Isabel had woken up and was now sitting on Olivia's lap, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy always said that angels appear when we need them, most. Olivia and Ascanio exchanged an emotional look. It was the first time they had heard Isabel talk so openly about her mother. "Your mother seemed to be a very special woman," said Olivia softly. "She was," agreed Isabel, opening the box she was still holding. "Look what she kept." From inside the box, the girl took out a partially charred photograph. It showed Clara, a young and beautiful woman, with the same big eyes as Isabel, sitting on a park bench. In her lap, an Isabel of approximately 3 years smiled at the camera, holding a doll, the same doll that was now headless. "It was the day I got Clarabelle," explained Isabel, caressing the photo. "Mummy sewed her for me." "Clarabelle?" asked Ascanio, his voice choked. "The doll is named after your mother?" Isabel nodded. "When he burned our house, I could only save Clarabelle, but he ripped off her head to make me cry." Silent tears streamed down Olivia's face as she listened to the girl speak. Ascanio felt his own hands tremble with anger. "But now I don't need her anymore," continued Isabel, surprising. "The adults. Mummy left much more important things for me to keep." The moment was interrupted by the cell phone of Ascanio's phone rang. It was Evelyn. "You need to get to the hospital now," said the lawyer, her voice urgent. "Regina is very weak, but she needs to tell you something about the night of the fire. Something that will change everything." "But the hearing," Ascanio began. "We still have 2 hours," Evelyn cut in. "And trust me, we need to hear this." When he hung up, Ascanio noticed that Isabel was watching him with an intensity surprising for a child of her age. "It's about the night of the fire, isn't it?" she asked. "Aunt Regina saw everything. She tried to save Mommy, but he wouldn't let her." Olivia and Ascanio exchanged surprised glances. How could Isabel know this? "Mommy told me," explained the girl, as if reading their thoughts. "On the last night before the fire, she told me many things. She said that one day I would understand everything. I think that day has come." The rain was finally beginning to subside outside. The sky was slowly clearing, announcing the arrival of a new day. But for that small group gathered in Evelyn's office, the real dawn depended on what would happen in the next few hours. As they carefully gathered the documents and prepared to leave, Isabel took one last look at the headless doll, abandoned in the corner of the room. "Goodbye, Clarabelle," she whispered. "Now I have real Mommy with me again." The hospital was quiet at that hour of the morning. Only the sound of medical equipment and the hurried steps of the on-duty staff broke the silence of the corridors. Regina was in room 304, under constant observation after the heart attack she had suffered. When the group entered the room, they found the elderly lady connected to several monitors. Her face was pale, but her eyes maintained a surprising liveliness. Evelyn was already there, holding a small recorder. "Isabel," Regina whispered, extending a trembling hand towards the girl. "My little one, you're so grown up." Olivia approached, with Isabel in her lap, allowing the lady to touch the girl's face. Silent tears streamed down Regina's wrinkled face. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "So sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. Your mother, Clara, deserved justice a long time ago." "Mrs. Mallory," Evelyn intervened gently, "I know you're weak, but we need your testimony. Can you tell us what happened that night?" Regina closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When she reopened them, there was an iron determination in her gaze. "It was hot that night," she began. "I couldn't sleep. I saw when Dale arrived, around 2 in the morning. He was agitated, yelling at Clara on the porch. She had a folder in her hands, documents she had gathered about him." The lady paused, her breathing becoming heavier. The heart monitor accelerated slightly. "Don't push yourself," Olivia asked, worried. "No," Regina insisted. "I need to tell everything now." Clara shouted that she was going to report him, that she had found out about the other children. He tried to grab the folder by force, but she ran inside. "I went there, tried to interfere." Her hands squeezed the sheet tightly as she continued. He pushed me, went into the house after her. I heard sounds of fighting, things breaking. When I managed to get up, I saw the smoke. The fire started in her room, but it spread very quickly. I tried to go in, but he stopped me. How? Asked Evelyn, tilting the recorder closer. He held me tightly, said that if I tried to help, I would be next. I froze, her screams. Regina began to cry. I'll never forgive myself for not doing more. Isabel, who had been listening in silence, climbed out of Olivia's lap and approached the bed. With a maturity impressive for her age, she took Regina's hand. Don't cry, Aunt Regina, she said softly. Mommy knew this could happen. That's why she told me to sleep at your house that night. Regina's eyes widened. How do you know this? She told me, Isabel replied. She said she had to protect some very important things, but that I was even more important. She made me promise that I would stay at your house that night, no matter what happened. The revelation hit everyone like lightning. Clara had planned everything, predicting what Dale might do. She had chosen to protect her daughter above any evidence or document. There's more, continued Regina, her voice growing weaker. After the fire was controlled, I saw Dale rummaging through the rubble. He was looking for something desperately. When the firefighters arrived, he changed completely, started crying, pretending to be devastated. No one suspected. But you saw everything, Evelyn completed. Yes, and I kept that to myself all these years. The fear prevented me from speaking until yesterday. When he showed up at my door, he was furious, demanding that I testify in his favor at the hearing, said that if I didn't cooperate, I would have the same end as Clara. The heart monitor began to beep faster. A nurse entered the room, checking. Regina's vital signs. She needs to rest, warned the professional. Just one more moment, Regina pleaded. I need to show you something. With trembling hands, she removed an envelope from under her pillow. Clara gave me this on the morning of that day, said to only open it if something happened to her. I never had the courage until today. Evelyn took the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small cell phone chip. She recorded all the conversations, Regina explained. Every threat, every veiled confession from Dale about the other children. It's all there. Clara knew he would try to destroy the evidence, so she made several copies. This was one of them. The nurse insisted that they needed to leave. Regina was getting too agitated, her vital signs unstable. Before they left the room, however, the lady called Isabel one last time. Your mother was the bravest person I've ever known, she said, caressing the girl's face, and you are exactly like her. In the hospital hallway, the group tried to process everything they had discovered. Evelyn examined the chip carefully. We still have an hour until the hearing, she said. I need to listen to these recordings and organize everything. But will the judge accept it? Asked Ascanio. It's evidence presented at the last minute. He will have to accept it, Evelyn replied firmly, especially because it's not just evidence against Dale in Clara's case. It's evidence of a much larger scheme involving other children. Olivia, who was holding Isabel again, noticed that the girl was strangely quiet. Are you okay, sweetheart? She asked softly. Isabel nodded, her eyes fixed on the hallway window where the first rays of sun were beginning to appear. Mommy always said that the truth is like the sun, she murmured. It may take a while, but it always appears for everyone to see. At that moment, Evelyn's phone rang. Her expression changed as she answered, becoming grave. It was my contact at the courthouse, she said, after hanging up. Dale didn't show up for the hearing. No one knows where he is. A chill ran through the group. If Dale had fled, it meant that other, even darker secrets might be about to come to light. He'll be back, said Isabel suddenly, her voice carrying an eerie certainty. He always comes back, but this time... She squeezed the box with her mother's memories against her chest. This time, we're ready for him. The courthouse was crowded. When they arrived, despite the early hour, a small crowd was gathered in the corridors. Residents of the neighborhood, curious people attracted by the story that was already circulating in the newspapers, and even some reporters who had found out about the hearing. Evelyn led the group through a side entrance, avoiding the commotion. In a small waiting room, she adjusted the documents and the cell phone chip that Regina had handed over. Her hands trembled slightly as she organized the material. "Were you able to listen to the recordings?" asked Ascanio. "Some parts," Evelyn replied. "They're conversations from the last months of Clara. She was methodical, recorded everything. And Olivia..." She hesitated, looking at the psychologist who was cradling Isabel. "You need to hear this." Evelyn connected a headset to her cell phone and handed it to Olivia. For a few minutes, everyone watched in silence as her expression changed. First surprise, then horror, and finally a deep sadness. "Oh my God," she murmured, returning the headset. "So that's why..." The door opened, interrupting the conversation. It was the court officer, announcing that the hearing would begin in 10 minutes. He also informed them that Dale had still not been located, but his lawyer was present, and the session would take place anyway. "Isabel needs to stay with someone while we're inside," said Evelyn. "Things could get intense." "I don't want to be alone," protested the girl, clinging tighter to Olivia. "And you won't be," Ascanio assured her. He gestured to a lady who had just entered the room. It was Consuela, his housekeeper for over 20 years. "She'll take care of you while we sort everything out." Isabel studied the lady for a moment, as if assessing her trustworthiness. After a few seconds, she nodded slightly. "Can I keep Mommy's box?" she asked. "Of course, my love," Olivia replied, helping her down from her lap. "And as soon as we're done, we'll come and get you." When they entered the courtroom, the atmosphere was suffocating. Judge Miller, known for his strictness, was already in his place. Dale's lawyer, a greasy-looking man named Silvera, smiled unpleasantly when he saw them. "Your Honor," he began as soon as everyone was seated, "considering the absence of my client, victim of a violent attack that left him hospitalized..." "Objection," Evelyn interrupted. "There is no record of any hospitalization. Mr. Dale simply disappeared after committing new criminal acts this morning." The judge adjusted his glasses, his stern gaze alternating between the two lawyers. "Ms. Torres, do you have proof of these accusations?" "Yes, Your Honor, and not only about the events of this night. We have evidence of a series of crimes committed by Mr. Dale over the past few years." Silvera laughed scornfully. "More defamation against my client, a hard-working man who nobly took on the upbringing of an orphaned girl. An orphan that he himself created," Olivia exploded, unable to contain herself. "After murdering her mother." "Order!" the judge shouted, banging his gavel. "Ms. Olivia, control your client or I will have to ask you to leave." Evelyn took a deep breath, reorganizing her thoughts. "Your Honor, I request permission to present new evidence. Evidence that shows a criminal pattern that goes far beyond Isabel's case." The judge gestured for her to proceed. For the next hour, Evelyn methodically presented each piece of evidence: Clara's diary, the newspaper clippings about the other cases, the documents found in the secret box. "And finally," she said, connecting the cell phone to a stereo, "the recordings made by Clara Mendonça herself in the months preceding her death." Clara's voice filled the room, clear and determined, despite the evident fear. "He confessed, God. He really confessed. Said that the other children were just merchandise, that he got a lot of money from them. When I asked about the families, he laughed, said that no one misses children of single mothers from the slums." The judge, who had until then maintained a neutral expression, leaned forward, visibly disturbed. Silvera began to sweat. "This is clearly a setup," he protested weakly. "Recordings can be altered." "The technical expertise has already confirmed," The authenticity, Evelyn cut in, as well as the authenticity of the diary and other documents. But there's more, Your Honor. Much more. It was then that she played the recording that she had shown Olivia earlier, a conversation between Clara and Regina on the morning of the fire. "If something happens to me," Clara said, "look in the false bottom of the kitchen cabinet. Everything. Is there names, dates, places? He is not who he says he is. His real name is—" A crash interrupted the recording. The doors of the courtroom burst open, and Consuela ran in a panic. "He took her!" shouted the lady, almost breathless. "Dale appeared out of nowhere. Took Isabel." Chaos broke out in the room. Olivia fell to her knees, her legs failing. Ascanio was already running for the door, while Evelyn tried to stay calm, to understand what had happened. "He was disguised," Consuela sobbed. "As a janitor, appeared with a cleaning cart. When I saw it, he was already pointing something at her back, took the girl and the box." "The box?" Evelyn paled. "My God, he didn't just want Isabel. He wanted to destroy the evidence." The judge immediately activated the courthouse security, but Ascanio knew it would be too late. He knew that building well. There were dozens of exits, and Dale probably already had everything planned. It was Olivia who, still trembling but with sudden clarity, asked the question that would change everything. "What was in that last recording, Evelyn? What is his real name?" The lawyer hesitated for a moment, then replied in a low voice, "Robert Garcia. And according to the records I found, he had a daughter 30 years ago, a daughter he never met, but who became a single mother and died in a mysterious fire 2 years ago." The silence that followed was deafening. The revelation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Dale wasn't just a common criminal. He was Isabel's grandfather, and now he had disappeared with her, taking with him the only evidence that could condemn him. The courthouse turned into a bustling anthill. Police officers ran through the corridors. Security camera images were being analyzed, and a thorough search of the building was underway. But Olivia, sitting in a chair in the courtroom with her face in her hands, knew it was useless. She felt in her heart that Isabel was no longer there. "How didn't we realize?" she murmured, while Ascanio paced back and forth, talking on the phone with his contacts. "How didn't we see that he was her grandfather?" Evelyn, who was frantically reviewing her notes, replied without looking up. Clara didn't know either. In the recordings, she mentions that her mother never revealed the identity of her father. Robert Garcia, or Dale as we know him, abandoned a family before his daughter was even born. "But why come back now? Why do all this?" Olivia questioned. "Money," Evelyn replied bitterly. "It's always been about money. He found out about his daughter by chance when he was looking for his next target. When he realized that she was a single mother with a young daughter, he saw an opportunity," completed Ascanio, hanging up the phone. "Another child for his sick scheme." Judge Miller, who had remained silent observing everything, finally spoke. "We need to understand where he might have taken the girl. Ms. Torres, in your research, did you find any pattern in the other cases? Any place he used to use?" Evelyn frowned thoughtfully. "In the other cases, he always disappeared with the children to other cities. But now it's different. He's cornered, with no time to plan, and he took the box with the evidence." "The box," murmured Olivia, suddenly alert. "Evelyn, you said that Clara found out everything in the last few months. Where did she keep her investigations before she died?" "In the false bottom of the kitchen cabinet," Evelyn replied. "But the house was destroyed in the fire." "No," Olivia interrupted, standing up. "Not all of it. Isabel showed us yesterday. The kitchen survived. The cabinet is still there." Ascanio understood immediately. He's going to Clara's house. It's the only place where he can be sure to destroy all the evidence. The judge immediately picked up his phone, calling the police. But Olivia was already at the door, with Ascanio right behind her. "We can't wait," she shouted over her shoulder. "He might hurt Isabel." Evelyn ran after them, shouting instructions for her assistant to continue organizing the evidence they already had. In the courthouse parking lot, they got into Ascanio's car, he driving, Olivia next to him, and Evelyn in the back seat. As they sped through the city streets, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about Isabel. The girl had faced so much in her short life, so much suffering, so much loss. And now she was in the hands of the man who had killed her mother. She must be so scared, Olivia whispered, more to herself than to the others. "Don't be so sure," Evelyn replied, fiddling with her cell phone. "Listen to this." She played another excerpt from Clara's recordings. "Isabel is different. There's a strength inside her that even I don't quite understand. Sometimes when Dale is at his worst, she looks at him in a way as if she knows something he doesn't know, as if she understands that he is small despite all his terror." "And Clara was right," said Ascanio, making a sharp turn. "You saw how Isabel has changed since we found her mother's things. It's as if something has awakened in her." The car stopped abruptly 1 block from Clara's house. They could already see smoke coming from the kitchen windows. "Oh my God," Olivia gasped. "He's going to do it again. He's going to burn everything." But before they could get out of the car, Evelyn stopped them. "Wait. Look." Through the smoke that was beginning to thicken, they saw 2 figures at the entrance to the kitchen. Dale, holding a gas can, was yelling at someone, and that someone, small but strangely erect, was Isabel. "Where's the box?" he roared. "Where did you hide it?" Even from a distance, they could see that Isabel showed no fear. She stood there, facing the man who had destroyed her family, with an expression that mixed pity and determination. "I'm not going to tell you," her childish voice sounded clear in the morning air. "Mommy knew you were going to come back here. She showed me all the special places." "You little pest!" Dale moved to grab her, but Isabel didn't move. "You're not scary anymore," she said, her voice trembling slightly but maintaining its firmness. "Mommy showed me who you really are. A sad man who hurts children because he can't love anyone." The statement seemed to hit Dale like a punch. He staggered back, knocking over the gas can. You don't know anything," he stammered. "I'm your grandfather, your blood." "No," replied Isabel, taking a small step towards him. "You're the man who killed my mother, and she knew you would do it. That's why she left everything prepared." At that moment, sirens began to sound in the distance. Dale looked frantically around like a cornered animal. "Where's the box?" he asked again, his voice now more desperate than threatening. Isabel took another step towards him. Even without being able to see her face clearly, Olivia could feel the strength emanating from that small figure. "You'll never find it," she said simply, "because you never understood Mommy's love for me. You never understood that real love can't be burned." It was then that Ascanio, Olivia, and Evelyn realized Isabel wasn't confronting Dale by chance. She was keeping him distracted, keeping him there while the sirens approached. The frightened girl who needed protection had transformed into something that Dale could never comprehend, a child who carried within herself the strength and wisdom of her mother. The sirens were very close now. Dale looked one last time at Isabel, and something in his face changed, as if, for the first time, he really saw her. Not as a source of income, not as a piece in his cruel game, but as she really was. The living proof that his entire plan had failed. "You're just like her," he murmured, his voice breaking. "Just like Clara." It was his last sentence before the police cars surrounded the house. The chaos that followed seemed to happen in slow motion. Police officers surrounded the house. Command voices echoed, and Dale, for the first time since that whole story had begun, seemed genuinely lost. His eyes, before always calculating and cold, now wandered unfocused between Isabel and the approaching squad cars. Olivia was the first to run towards the house, with Ascanio right behind. Evelyn remained with the police officers, quickly explaining the situation. But before anyone could reach them, Isabel did something surprising. She took another step, towards Dale. "Grandpa," she said, using that word for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost compassionate. "Mommy told me about you, about how you abandoned her before she was even born." Dale staggered as if he had been slapped. She couldn't have known that. "Grandma told her before she died," continued Isabel. "Mommy found out that you were her father when she started investigating. She cried a lot that night." Dale's legs failed, and he fell to his knees on the porch. The smoke coming from the kitchen was beginning to dissipate. The fire he had tried to start hadn't spread. "Why didn't you want to be Mommy's father?" asked Isabel, her voice choked but firm. "Why did you prefer to hurt other children instead of loving your own daughter?" Olivia and Ascanio, who had reached the porch, stopped a few feet away, feeling that they were witnessing something important enough to be interrupted. I didn't know how," murmured Dale, seeming to shrink with each word. Love hurts too much. It's easier to use people." "It's not," Isabel replied simply. "Mommy taught me that love is the strongest thing there is. Stronger than fire, stronger than fear." She paused, her eyes shining with contained tears. "Stronger than you." It was as if something broke inside Dale. A strange sound escaped from his throat, half sob, half stifled scream. His shoulders began to tremble. "You could have been different," continued Isabel. "You could have known Mommy, have been a real grandfather to me, but you chose to be a monster." "Isabel," called Olivia softly, worried about the direction of the conversation. But the girl raised a small hand, asking for silence. There was something she needed to finish. "Do you know why I wasn't afraid of you anymore?" she asked Dale. "Because Mommy showed me that you were just a sad man. A man who never learned to love." Dale raised his tear-stained face. You don't understand. I tried to change when I found out about Clara, but it was too late. I had already done so much wrong." "And you kept doing it," completed Isabel. "You killed my mother. You hurt other children. You hurt Aunt Regina." The police officers were approaching slowly, but no one dared to interrupt that moment. Evelyn had joined Olivia and Ascanio, discreetly recording everything on her cell phone. Where is the box?" asked Dale one last time, his voice now just a defeated whisper. Isabel gave a small smile, the same sweet smile that Clara had in the photos that were left. "In the safest place in the world," she replied, "with people who know what real love is." Her eyes met Olivia's and Ascanio's, and at that moment, they understood. During the confusion at the courthouse before Dale appeared, Isabel had handed the box to someone she trusted completely. "Consuela," murmured Ascanio, remembering his housekeeper. She wasn't really in a panic when she entered the courtroom. She was acting. Olivia covered her mouth with her hands, impressed with the girl's cunning. Even in that moment of fear and confusion, Isabel had kept a cool head, protecting her mother's legacy. "How?" asked Dale, seeming even smaller. "How can a child be so strong?" completed Isabel. "Mommy prepared me for this. Every night, she told me stories about courage, about doing the right thing even when it hurts, about how true love always wins in the end." At that moment, the police officers finally approached to make the arrest. Dale offered no resistance. He seemed to have aged decades in the last few minutes, as if the weight of all his crimes had finally caught up with him. As the handcuffs closed on his wrists, he looked one last time at Isabel. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Not for the arrest, not for what they're going to do to me. I'm sorry for never knowing Clara, for never being the father she deserved." Isabel watched as he was led away. Her small body finally began to tremble, as if all the strength that had kept her firm during the confrontation was draining away. Olivia ran to pick her up, and Isabel collapsed in her arms, crying like the child she was, a child who had carried too much weight for too long. "It's over, my love," Olivia whispered, rocking her gently. "It's over." Ascanio approached, wrapping them both in a protective embrace. Evelyn, still recording, captured the exact moment when Isabel raised her tear-stained face and whispered, "Mommy said I was going to find a new family. A real family." She was right. She was always right. The morning sun finally broke through, the clouds illuminating the porch where so many tragedies had happened. But now, in that same place, something new was beginning to be born, a family formed not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by love. The box with Clara's memories was safe. The truth had overcome the shadows. And Isabel, the little warrior who carried the courageous heart of her mother, could finally begin to be just what she was, a beloved child. The hours that followed Dale's arrest were intense. Clara's house became the center of a thorough investigation, with experts examining every corner, especially the kitchen where the last fire had been attempted. In the hospital, Regina recovered slowly, now under police protection, and at the courthouse, Judge Miller dedicated himself personally to reviewing the entire case. Isabel, exhausted after the emotional confrontation with her grandfather, slept in Olivia's lap in a reserved room at the courthouse. Evelyn went in and out, bringing updates in a low voice so as not to wake the girl. "His confession was complete," whispered the lawyer, sitting next to Ascanio. After Isabel confronted him, it was like a dam had burst. He told everything. "Everything?" asked Ascanio, his voice tense. Evelyn nodded gravely. "The other children. He sold them to an illegal adoption ring in the countryside. Wealthy families, desperate to adopt, paid fortunes without asking questions. The police are already tracing each case." Olivia squeezed Isabel tighter against her chest, as if she could retroactively protect her from all that horror. The girl stirred in her sleep, murmuring something that sounded like, "Mommy." "There's one more thing," continued Evelyn, shuffling through her folder. "Judge Miller just signed an order. Considering the exceptional circumstances of the case and the clear emotional bond established," she paused, a small smile appearing on her lips, "he has granted temporary custody of Isabel to Olivia." The impact of that news was like a warm wave of emotion. Silent tears began to stream down Olivia's face, while Ascanio squeezed her hand in support. But how?" asked Olivia, her voice choked. "Normally these processes take months, years." The judge considered that, after everything that has happened, Isabel needs immediate stability, Evelyn explained. "In addition, your record as a child psychologist and the reports we already have about the bond between the two of you weighed heavily in the decision." At that moment, Isabel opened her eyes slowly. For an instant she seemed disoriented, but upon seeing Olivia, she visibly relaxed. "Aunt Olivia," she murmured sleepily, "I dreamed about Mommy." "Did you, sweetheart?" asked Olivia softly. "And how was it?" "She was smiling," replied Isabel, settling into Olivia's lap. "She said that now I can be happy again, that I found people who know how to love like she loved." The simplicity of those words touched everyone in the room. Evelyn discreetly wiped away a tear, while Ascanio cleared his throat to disguise his emotion. "Isabel," began Olivia carefully, "how would you feel about living with me forever?" The girl sat up straight, her eyes suddenly very attentive. "Really, forever?" "Yes, my love. The judge just authorized it. You would be my daughter legally. Of course, if you want, Isabel was silent for a moment, her little face assuming that serious expression that made her look much older than her 6 years. "And Uncle Ascanio?" she asked finally. "Is he going to stay with us too?" Olivia and Ascanio exchanged a surprised look. It was the first time that the possibility had been put so directly. "Well," began Ascanio, hesitant, I could visit always, if you want." "No," said Isabel firmly. "It has to be for living. Mommy always said that real family stays together." Evelyn couldn't contain a small laugh. "You know, she's right. And technically, considering that you both demonstrated equal dedication to her well-being throughout this process, the judge could expand the temporary custody to include Ascanio," completed Olivia, her voice low but full of meaning. "Precisely," confirmed Evelyn. "Of course, this is a very serious decision that you need to discuss." "No need to discuss," interrupted Isabel, surprising everyone. "Adults always wants to argue everything. But some things we just feel here." She pointed to her own chest. "Mommy taught me that." The simple wisdom of that child, who had faced more pain in her short years of life than many adults, left the room in silence. Olivia looked at Ascanio, seeing in his eyes the reflection of her own feelings, the love that had never really died, just transformed, matured, and now found a new purpose. "She's right," said Ascanio finally. "Some things we just feel." "Then it's decided," declared Isabel with an adorable conviction. "We're going to be a family." Evelyn was already making notes in her folder. "I'll prepare the documents later today, but there's one thing we need to resolve first." She hesitated, looking at the girl with affection. "Isabel, honey, the box with your mother's things. We need it to finish the legal process." "Oh, that!" Isabel smiled, that sweet smile that was so much like Clara's. "Consuela should be arriving with it soon. I asked her to wait 2 hours before coming back to the courthouse." Everyone looked at her in admiration. "You planned all this?" asked Ascanio. "Mommy always said planning is important, but trusting your heart is even more important," replied Isabel. "I knew he was going to look for me at the courthouse. I knew he was going to want the box, so you set a trap," Evelyn completed, impressed. "You used yourself as bait, knowing that we would be around to help." "Just like her mother," murmured a voice from the door. It was Regina in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse. Clara was like that too, always 3 steps ahead, always thinking of everything. "Aunt Regina!" Isabel jumped out of Olivia's lap and ran to hug the lady. "Are you better?" "I am, my angel," replied Regina, caressing the girl's hair. "And I'll be even better knowing that you finally found your family. A real family." At that moment, Consuela entered the room carrying the precious box. Her eyes were red from crying, but she had a smile on her face. "Sorry for the delay," she said, "but someone asked me to wait exactly 2 hours before coming back." Isabel ran to get the box, bringing it carefully to the table. Everyone watched, in silence as she opened the lid, removing something that no one had noticed before, a sealed envelope with her name on it, written in Clara's delicate handwriting. "Mommy said to only open it when I found my new family," she explained, her small hands trembling slightly. "I think the time has come." The envelope that Isabel was holding was slightly yellowed with age, but it remained intact, protected inside. The box, for all those years. The silence in the room was absolute as the girl looked at her mother's handwriting, running her small fingers over her name, written with such love. "Do you want me to help you open it?" offered Olivia softly, noticing how Isabel's hands were trembling. The girl shook her head negatively. "I need to do this alone, like Mommy would." With care, almost reverence, Isabel began to open the envelope. The sound of the paper being gently torn seemed to echo in the room. Regina, still in her wheelchair, held Consuela's hand, both with tears in their eyes. Evelyn had stopped, making notes, her pen suspended in the air. Ascanio, unconsciously, had moved closer to Olivia, his fingers interlacing with hers. Inside the envelope were several sheets of paper, covered with Clara's elegant handwriting. Isabel took a deep breath before beginning to read aloud. "My little Isabel, if you are reading this letter, it means that my greatest hopes and my worst fears have come true. It means that I am no longer with you physically, but that you have found people who deserve to know the whole truth. First, my love, I need you to know, every moment with you was a gift. From the first kick in my belly to the last hug we gave, you were the greatest joy of my life. And that's why, for that great love, I started investigating when I realized that something was wrong. Dale appeared in our lives as an answer to my prayers, a kind, helpful man who seemed to care. But you, my wise daughter, always felt that there was something wrong. Remember how you hid when he arrived, how your drawings were getting darker, sadder. It was watching you that I started paying more attention, and the more I looked, the more horror I found. The other children, the other mothers, a terrible pattern that repeated itself city after city. But the most painful discovery came when I finally understood who he really was. Dale, or rather Robert Garcia, is my father, Isabel, the man who abandoned my mother before I was even born, the man who never wanted to be family. When I realized this, something inside me changed. It was no longer just about protecting us, it was about preventing him from hurting more people. Your grandmother, my mother, told me everything about him on her deathbed. How he was always cruel, manipulative, using people for his own benefit. That's why I started gathering evidence. Every document in this box, every recording, every piece of evidence was collected thinking of you, my daughter. Because I knew he wouldn't let me expose the truth. But you, my little warrior, you are stronger than he will ever be. You have within you not only my love, but the love of all the women in our family who came before. Women who faced their own battles, who survived, who loved despite the pain. If you are reading this, it also means that you have found special people. People who saw in you what I always saw, a light that no darkness can extinguish. People who chose to fight for you, who chose to love you. Trust them, my love. Allow yourself to be loved by them. Family is not just the one we are born into, it is also the one we choose, the one we build with love and trust. There's one more thing you need to know. On the last page of this letter, I glued a key. It opens a small safe deposit box at the downtown bank. Inside it, you will find not only the complete documentation of all of Dale's crimes, but also something much more precious. A diary that belonged to your grandmother, my mother. In it, she tells our full story. Not a story of abandonment and sadness, but a story of strength, of women who always found a way to move forward, to love despite everything. And now, my Isabel, it's your turn to write your own story. With your new family, with your huge heart that always knew how to distinguish good from evil, you will create happier chapters than I could imagine. Never forget, you are loved, deeply, completely, eternally loved, by me, by your new special people, by all the strong women who came before us. Be happy, my little one. Allow yourself to laugh, to play, to be a child. The weight that you carried for so long is no longer yours to carry. And when you feel homesick, look at the night sky. I chose to be buried under the stars because I knew you always loved counting them with me. Each star in the sky is a kiss from me, a hug, and I love you. With all my love, today and always, Mommy. When Isabel finished reading, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. The girl was holding the last page of the letter, where a small golden key was carefully glued. "Clara," murmured Regina, her voice choked. "She thought of everything." "She really did," agreed Evelyn, wiping away her own tears. Every step, every detail. Olivia knelt in front of Isabel, getting to her eye level. "Do you want to go to the bank now?" To everyone's surprise, Isabel shook her head negatively. "Tomorrow," she said, carefully putting the letter back in the envelope. Today I just want to go home with my new family." Ascanio approached, also kneeling. "Are you sure? Don't you want to know what's in the safe deposit box?" Isabel smiled, that sweet and wise smile that was so much hers. "Mommy always said that some things are better when we wait a little bit." And now, she looked at Olivia and Ascanio, her eyes shining with love and trust. "Now I'm not in a hurry anymore." The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the sky itself celebrated the new beginning. Isabel woke up early in her new room at Olivia's house, a cozy space that was already beginning to gain her personality, with colorful drawings on the walls and Clara's memory box carefully placed on a small desk. Olivia found the girl sitting on the bed, watching the golden key against the sunlight coming through the window. "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" she asked, sitting next to Isabel. "Yes," replied the girl with a serene smile. "I dreamed about Mommy again. She was in the garden planting flowers, and she was smiling a lot." The doorbell rang, and soon Ascanio appeared at the bedroom door, bringing a small box of donuts. He had discovered that it was Isabel's favorite breakfast. "Ready for our mission?" he asked, trying to keep a light tone despite the importance of the moment. The bank opened at 9 o'clock, and they were the first customers of the day. Evelyn was already waiting for them in the lobby, along with 2 employees who had been specially assigned to assist them. The safe deposit box that Clara's key opened was in a reserved area of the bank. When the vault door finally opened, it revealed a metal box slightly larger than a shoebox. Isabel, holding Olivia's and Ascanio's hands, stepped forward. Inside the box, there were several neatly organized and labeled envelopes, a flash drive, and, in the center of everything, a book with a worn red cover. Isabel's grandmother's diary. "Want me to read to you?" offered Olivia, taking the diary carefully. Isabel nodded, settling into Ascanio's lap, while Evelyn organized the other documents. The first page of the diary made everyone hold their breath. "To my daughter Clara, and to my granddaughter Isabel, who is not yet born, but is already deeply loved. I write this story so that you understand that not every lost love means a broken heart. Sometimes losing a bad love is the greatest blessing we can receive." The diary told the story of Maria, Isabel's grandmother, and her brief relationship with Robert Garcia, Dale. How he had appeared in her life promising eternal love, but always showing signs of his true nature. How she discovered her pregnancy only after he left, taking all her savings. But instead of a story of bitterness, Maria had transformed her experience into strength. She worked double shifts, studied at night, built a dignified life for herself. And for Clara, and more importantly, she taught her daughter to recognize true love, to never settle for less than that. "My Clara," said an especially moving passage, "if you are reading this, it means that I have finally found the courage to tell you the truth about your father. But I want you to know you were never less loved for not having him in your life. On the contrary, you were more loved because all the love I had to give was just yours." Isabel listened to everything with absolute attention, her small hands holding the box with Clara's memories. From time to time, a silent tear streamed down her face, but her gaze remained serene, almost happy. The other envelopes contained exactly what Clara had promised, detailed documentation about all of Dale's crimes, including names and locations of the families who had bought the other children illegally. "With this," said Evelyn, organizing the papers, "we can not only ensure that he never leaves prison, but also start looking for these children, give closure to other families who have suffered at his hands." But Isabel seemed more interested in the last pages of her grandmother's diary. where Maria had written a kind of letter to her unborn granddaughter. My little star, I still don't know your name, nor what your smile will be like, but I know it will be special because it will come from a lineage of women who have learned to transform pain into love, fear into courage. Perhaps when you read these words, you have already faced your own battles. Perhaps you have known pain, fear, loss. But I want you to know, you have never been alone. Every tear of yours was cried before by your mother, by me, by all the women who came before. And every smile of yours is our victory too, because we choose to believe in love, even when it would be easier to give up. When they finished reading, Isabel was silent for a long moment, absorbing everything. Then, to everyone's surprise, she began to take the documents out of her memory box. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" asked Olivia. "Putting Grandma's diary with Mommy's things," she replied simply. "They need to stay together." And she hesitated for a moment, looking at Olivia and Ascanio. "I want to start my own diary too, to tell about my new family." Ascanio needed to turn away to disguise his tears, while Olivia hugged Isabel tightly. "You know," continued the girl, her voice soft but firm, "Mommy always said that sad stories can have happy endings if we are courageous enough to allow it." That afternoon, after all the documents had been properly recorded and stored, the small family returned home. On the way, they stopped at a toy store where Isabel chose a new doll. Not to replace Clarabelle, she explained, but to keep her company. "I'm going to call her Star," she said, hugging the doll, "because Mommy is in the stars, sending me kisses." At home, while Olivia and Ascanio prepared dinner, Isabel sat at her new desk. She opened a blank notebook that she had won and, with her childish handwriting still irregular, began to write. "My story begins with 3 very brave women. My great-grandmother Maria, who chose to love even after being hurt. My grandmother Clara, who protected me before I was even born. And my mommy, who taught me that true love is stronger than any fear. But my story does not end with sadness, because now I have a new mommy, who has a heart as big as the sky, and a new daddy, who has the kindest eyes in the world. And together the 3 of us are learning that family is not just who is born together, it is who chooses to stay together, no matter what happens." Outside, the first stars began to appear in the sky, and somewhere among them, Clara smiled, knowing that her little Isabel had finally found her place in the world.